Diablo IV is a caramel onion. For those of you who have played the game along with others in the genre, you might have an idea of what I mean by that. For those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, let me explain why this AAA $70 behemoth of a game is more ass than amazing, more repugnant than respectable, more poo than pleasant, and much, much more greedy than it is good. There. How's that for an intro, YouTube? Diablo IV has been out for about 4 months now, and for those that were interested enough to jump in upon release, the game has had more than enough time to sit on our tongues and consequentially burn the ever-loving shit out of it. Or maybe I should say nickel and dime the ever-loving shit out of it, but more on that later. I really wanted to like Diablo IV. I was excited for it. I bought into the hype. I wanted to give Blizzard the benefit of the doubt that they are still capable of making good games in 2023. I tried really hard to like Diablo IV. Yet after playing for hours on end, I wasn't getting the same kind of satisfaction I'm used to getting from ARPGs. In a game that is so incredibly packed full of content, I often found myself bored and very unenthusiastic about the next dungeon I was supposed to be doing, mission I was supposed to be partaking in, and boss that I was supposed to be killing. Something was missing, and in a serious way. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out why it was exactly that I wasn't enjoying the game. On paper, it's everything an ARPG fan could ask for, a gigantic and beautiful world full of unique events, monsters, and loot. It wasn't until I finished the campaign that I started to realize how heavily the game depends on it. And after you finish that content, the void that lays before you makes it easy to see how Diablo IV is just a caramel onion. Beautiful on the outside, but deeply flawed at its core. Let's start off by talking about the things that I actually like about the game. Admittedly, this is a shorter list than the things that I don't, but there is a lot of stuff that the Blizzard devs did very right, so let's give them some credit for the caramel that surrounds this onion. The most obvious aspect of the game that can be praised is the visuals. The game is absolutely gorgeous. The character creation menu hits you with shockingly realistic hair and facial features for a game where the camera is 30 feet away from the player 90% of the time. The terrain is lush, detailed, and realistic, even if somewhat monotone in some areas. The color palette is much darker than the previous entry, replacing cartoonist aesthetics with a more gothic realism tone. Splashes of color are now used more sparingly and to greater effect. Killing a large horde of enemies gives a satisfying splatter of blood, and precious health files stick out of the scenery and beg to be grabbed. And legendary loot drops shine a beacon of gold that makes them seem like they were never meant to be on such a grotesque and disgusting surface like the ground. I absolutely love how this game looks, and whoever's leading the art direction at Blizzard deserves a big raise and a promotion to a significantly less shit game company. And whatever performance-enhancing drugs Blizzard was giving to its art team, the art team must have then been selling to the audio division as well, because the game sounds amazing. The soundtrack is more of what we've come to expect from Diablo games, and that is excellence in ambiance and melancholy. Sanctuary is a grim place to be, full of anger, resentment, and endless suffering, and every piece of music, from the drony menu tune to the action-packed boss themes, never let you forget that. It is satisfying just to exist in the towns of Diablo IV because of how well crafted the atmosphere is, and thank God for that, because you're going to be spending a lot of time standing around in towns in this game. Every spell that I have tried also has a very unique and satisfying audio layer that adds to the combat experience. Spells are recognizable and have a lot of punchy weight that makes them at least feel like they're strong, even if they're quite often the opposite. My favorites as of this writing are the puncturing shots from the rogues and the corpse explosions from the necromancers. This combination of the visuals and the audio creates a presentation that is unmatched in the ARPG world. Grim Dawn doesn't look nearly as good, and Path of Exile doesn't sound as good, and whatever game you're thinking of probably doesn't do either better than Diablo IV. As far as presentation goes, it's got everyone beat. And as you beat every demon in your character's line of sight, you might notice that the combat has changed pretty substantially from previous entries. Gone are the days of face-tanking bosses and crossing your fingers, hoping that your numbers roll higher than theirs. Combat is now much more movement-based, requiring you to dodge specific hitboxes and move around the arena a lot more than you might be used to. Even with the normal overworld mobs, you are heavily rewarded for weaving in and out of combat and controlling your enemies to some degree. It seems like the dev team took a lot of inspiration from the combat in games like Lost Ark and boss fights from Path of Exile, although I wish they would have taken even more from the latter. All things considered though, this is a very healthy direction for the combat to take. Fighting fierce fallen and beating brutish bosses feels more skill-based than it ever has in a Diablo game, and that is a good thing. I also love just how much there is to do in this game. I've seen a lot of people on the internet talk about this being somehow a bad thing, but I absolutely think it deserves praise. These seemingly endless amounts of dungeons, unique and interesting side quests, and multiplayer events that I run into while I'm playing all make me feel great as a player. There's always bonus stuff that happens around you no matter what your primary goal is. While I'm grinding Renowned, I might also jump nearby to complete a Tree of Whispers event just because there happens to be one. If I'm doing a side mission, there could be an Altar of Lilith or a Stronghold to complete for extra enemies and loot. The map even tells me when a multiplayer world event happens so I can plan my tasks accordingly and get to the location on time while still completing my main interests on the way. Diablo IV definitely does a great job in ensuring that you always have stuff to do while leveling, and the inclusion of the Renowned Completionist menu is just icing on the fucking cake, dude. Seriously, I fucking love these things. Way more games need to have menus like this. Seeing the activities get checked off in the menus is like a direct shot of dopamine to my brain. The story and the campaign are also, like, okay. They're pretty serviceable. Spoiler alert, skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear any spoilers or anything, but here we go. The story does kind of boil down to, sorry character, but your Lilith is in another castle, but the characters that we meet and their development along the way is satisfying to be a part of, while also leaving ample room for future content. Cutscenes are insane though. The cutscene where Lilith stabs Zenarius and there's like this full-scale war going on behind them is like the most captivating cutscene I've ever seen in gaming. I would gladly watch a 3-hour-long movie if it was created at that caliber. Blizzard's cutscenes are still untouchable compared to everyone else in the industry. And lastly, I want to mention the MMO and like the multiplayer aspects of the game. And I really like them actually. I don't think they changed the game significantly or had nearly the amount of impact that Blizzard might have wanted them to have, but I do enjoy seeing other players in town and running into them while out and exploring. It reminds me of seeing the ghosts of other players in Dark Souls games. It's also really nice for players that want to play cooperatively with their friends, even if historically these games were more solo experiences. World bosses are pretty meh, and I lost the drive to partake in them after the first one, but I want to be clear that the online functionality does not make the game worse off. The only online functionality makes the game worse off. Blizzard, please fix. And as far as good things about this game go, my list is now empty. Yes, of course, there are other things that Diablo IV does well that I did not mention, but hopefully now you guys get the idea that there are numerous aspects about the game that deserve praise. I am calling this game a caramel onion and not just a regular onion after all, and now you know that caramel is in fact sweet and could be worth your time if you're really into caramel. But let's get on to the onion part because there are quite a few layers to this one. Okay, so let's talk about what the core of an ARPG is for a second. What are the absolute basics an ARPG has? It has skill builds and it has loot. This is what you play an ARPG for. You make a character, you design a build based on a skill tree or a similar system, and you go and you kill monsters in a hope of finding good loot for your build and an effort to grow your character more and more powerful with every new piece of gear you get. The entire gameplay loop surrounds the progressions of your skills and the progression of your items. These two aspects need to be the highlight of any good ARPG. Extras are nice, but if these aspects are not done well, the game will suffer dramatically for it. And in Diablo IV, the skill builds and the items are some of the weakest elements in the entire game. Let's first talk about the skill tree. If you can even call it that, it's more akin to a skill road or a skill lane as far as I'm concerned, because there are actually very little decisions and branching options for you to choose from. Let's take the rogue for example. There are pretty much two builds for this character. You have shooty rogue and you have stabby rogue. That's it. If you want to go for a melee build, you're going to be leveling largely the same skills for every character. You'll get a basic stab ability, a movement stab ability, an ability that places some stabby things on the ground, and a key passive that buffs all of your stabby abilities. Fucking snore. And it's the same thing for the ranged options as well. They even went as far as to color code the builds for you so you don't fuck it up and accidentally step outside of the predetermined build box. All of Diablo IV's character skill trees operate like this. Builds are already outlined and pre-decided for you, and it takes about 30 seconds to look through any of the 5 skill trees to see exactly what Blizzard had in mind for how you should play your character. There is almost no room for experimentation in Diablo IV, which is a massive letdown. I want to be able to experiment and try new skill combinations in an effort to find something unique to both me and my playstyle in an ARPG. This would allow for the player to have more of a connection with their character and identify with them better because A, they found the build themselves, or they at least had the option to, and B, the chances that other players share a similar build is relatively low. This is not the case in Diablo IV. Every ranged rogue will have largely the same build. Every spin to win barb will have largely the same experience. Not only does it impact replayability poorly, but it lessens the impact of even a first playthrough while leveling an entirely new character because you know your experience is not unique even in the slightest. You chose a build that half of all the other Necros are using, not because you wanted to, but because you had no other option. The skill tree in Diablo IV is boring at best and insultingly rudimentary at worst. But Casson, you might ask, what about the Paragon board? You haven't talked about the Paragon board yet. Talk about the Paragon board. And you're right, I haven't talked about it yet. But that's because it too is immensely boring and does nothing to save Diablo 4's terrible skill progression. You unlock the Paragon board at level 50, and you get a few points to put into it at every level. At a first glance, this board is almost overwhelming with the amount of nodes that it throws at you and the possible routes that you can take. But upon closer inspection, you realize that the Paragon board is just a field of useless nodes that, again, are extremely underwhelming. 5 dexterity, you say? Aw, gee willikers, Blizzard, thank you so much! I was worried I might actually be able to get something that was useful, or even worse, something fun. Yeah, these boards fucking suck, dude, there's no way around it. There are rare and legendary nodes that do a little bit more to add some spice to the board, but they too are not without narcolepsy-inducing characteristics. Like, look at this rare one. Now it's 10 dexterity and some armor. But oh wait, I actually don't meet the strength requirement for a node that is on a board that is specific to rogues. Thank you, Blizzard. Please limit my build options more. You haven't done enough of that yet. The legendary nodes are really what you're after here, and the board is primarily about crafting an optimized path to them. But even they are underwhelming and will not greatly impact your playstyle. Like, look at this legendary node from the rogue. Whenever you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they take 1% extra damage, up to 15%. You can't see that while you're playing. I'd be surprised if you can even feel that while you're playing. Or look at this one from the barbarian. Swapping weapons grants 3 fury. That's it. And this is the endgame stuff I'm supposed to be looking forward to unlocking? I get that as you progress and you use glyphs, your character will get much stronger through the Paragon, but you just don't feel it much. We're being drip-fed basic stat and damage increases through a system that more often than not seems like something that could have and should have just increased in the background. Give me more interesting decisions to make. Give me choices that actually impact how I am playing my character in meaningful ways, and let me see those choices manifest during gameplay. I've heard people defending this system by saying, Diablo 4 is for the casual gamer, for the casual audience. It's for the working dad who comes home and only has a few hours to play. The leveling system needs to be straightforward and unpunishing to appeal to this mass audience. And to that, I ask, why? Why does a casual gamer deserve a worse game? If I only had a few hours a week to put into a game, I would want to make sure that I'm playing the best game I can. If I played Diablo 4 on and off for a year and got to level 80 and then looked back and thought, you know, that experience actually wasn't all that great, I would be pissed. The idea that people with limited time need to play a less complex and easier game is fucking stupid and has no backing whatsoever. The recent mainstream success of games like Elden Ring, Cuphead, Spelunky show that mainstream success and complexity are not mutually exclusive. Even with titles that people associate with the casual after-work gamer like Fortnite, Halo, and Call of Duty, these games are usually powered by their competitive and difficult PvP nature. For the casual gamers out there, I am sorry that this shade is being thrown your way. Everyone deserves to play great games no matter how much time they have to dedicate to them. Sadly, Blizzard disagrees and took Diablo 4 in a much different direction concerning complexity. For comparison's sake, let's take a look at an ARPG that does character progression better. My personal favorite, Grim Dawn. In Grim Dawn, not only do you have an entire 9 classes to choose from instead of Diablo's 5, but you combine 2 of these classes together for a grand total of 36 different class combinations that you can choose from. And since Grim Dawn's skill trees don't suck grim ass, every class combination has about 6 or 7 different builds that are guaranteed endgame viable, and dozens of different builds that will get you pretty far, but struggle to beat the game's most difficult challenges. So that's about 200 different builds that you can discover for yourself that can get you from the very start of the game to the very end of it. Even if we were being generous with Diablo and say every character has 4 different builds that they can do the same with, which they don't, that's still only 20 different endgame builds. And unlike Grim Dawn, there aren't really any weird and wacky alternatives for you to go for. 20 isn't just the number of endgame viable builds Diablo has. It's close to the total number of builds that Diablo has altogether. Sometimes in an ARPG, I don't care about endgame viability. Sometimes I want to make a stupid character and throw on every AoE passive spell that I can fit and just see how far I can get. Not because it's good, but because it's fun. That sort of gameplay does not exist in Diablo IV. The skill trees are so railroaded that it would actually be very difficult for you to create a skill build that isn't viable for World Tier 4. Like I said earlier, most of the builds are color-coded in the menu, so if you can paint by the numbers, you can theory craft in Diablo IV. The Paragon board equivalent in Grim Dawn is the Constellation map. Similarly, when you're first introduced to this thing, you're definitely overwhelmed by the sheer amount of nodes and paths that you can take. But dissimilarly, this board actually has fun stuff. Sure, there are stinkers, like 10% extra damage here and some resistances there, but the vast majority of these nodes are very high quality and worth your time to grind for. And the legendary nodes just annihilate all the nodes in Diablo IV. These things are basically entirely new skills that you attach to one of your character's basic skills. And then every time you use this basic skill, this new celestial ability has a chance of automatically casting for free. These skills are strong and gorgeous, and when you see them proc, they can just wipe the entire screen in front of you sometimes. You get to choose cool upgrades based off what kind of build that you're going for, and you feel and see their impact immediately. In Diablo IV, you choose a borderline unnoticeable passive and get some stat buffs to go along with it. So both the skill tree and the Paragon board are far too simplistic and sadly singular to warrant any real reward or replayability. Hopefully, future updates will expand upon the basic options that are here right now. Okay, now that we've gotten that shit show out of the way, what was the other thing that an ARPG needed? Let's see, was it aggressive microtransactions? No, it wasn't that. Was it a $10 battle pass on a $70 game? No, it wasn't that either. Was it a shitty mount mechanic? Was it that? No, it wasn't that either. What was it? Oh yeah, items, right. It was items. Let's talk about items. And when it comes to items, there's good news. And by good news, I mean terrible news. Dear God, hide the children, because items suck, and I think their entire design in Diablo IV is deeply flawed and unfun. Unlike the skill tree, where the foundation of how you build your character is bad, items are bad because a lot of seemingly unconnected decisions all collide to make finding and crafting loot a decidedly unfulfilling and boring experience. There are so many things about this system that I would change, but I'll just talk about the most important aspects for this video. First of all, there are 5 different item rarities that you can find in the world. You have normal, magic, rare, legendary, and unique. That makes sense. That's all fine and dandy. Except items don't really function like the rarities would lead you to believe. You would think that rare items are kind of rare, with legendaries being very special to get, and uniques being so crazy that when you get one, you message your friends on Discord just to rub it in their faces. But in reality, rare items drop so often that they are almost never worth picking up, and legendary items are filling your inventory space so consistently that it is literally inconvenient. The amount of times that I have had to stop exploring a dungeon and travel back to town just to empty my entire inventory full of useless legendaries is wild. I could excuse this kind of stuff happening if I was talking about endgame and late game grinding. There, it makes sense to have all these items dropping all the time, but I am not. This happens shockingly early during leveling. Level cap in Diablo IV is 100. What level do you think it is appropriate for a character to have legendary items in every single slot? Maybe level 80? Level 60? Maybe even level 50? How about level 30? Because that's the level that I was when I suddenly found my rogue packed to the brim of gold item slots. To put that into perspective in terms of experience, level 30 is 0.5% of the way to level 85, and it's 0.2% of the way to level 100. You are not even 1% into the game before you have an inventory full of legendaries. Now, these numbers are of course inflated because as you get more experience, you level up and fight tougher enemies and so on. So instead, let's look at playtime. I reached level 30 at roughly 15 hours of gameplay. I wasn't grinding or going fast, just casually doing the campaign and some side quests. You likely got there much quicker than I did. It is estimated that to reach level 100, you need to put a minimum of 150 hours in a single character. So that means that just 10% of your playtime is not completely congested by legendary item drops. And this problem is only going to become worse as quick leveling guides get more and more optimized. Legendaries do not feel special. They feel bloated. But this is by design. Blizzard actually wants these items to feel this way, because you're meant to take these useless legendary drops and destroy them to get a resource that you can use to slightly improve the legendaries that you're actually using. This is what I was talking about when I said that you will be standing around in towns a lot in Diablo IV. You have to sift through all these legendaries to see if there's any aspect that you like at all, scrap everything else in a hope of getting some resources from it, and use those resources to replace aspects or re-roll some stats on your current items. I think I spend more time doing this stupid fucking song and dance in towns than I do actually playing the game and killing things. Why? Why not just limit the legendary drops and instead get this resource from specific dungeon bosses or something? Because right now, when I see a legendary item drop, I don't think, oh, sick, a good item. I think, shit, I've found quite a few of these by now. I'm probably gonna have to go back to town soon. It sucks, and I hate it.
The only item tier that has done semi-well is uniques. These are the only truly rare items in the entire game at the moment. Supposedly, you're only going to be able to find a handful over the course of a season that lasts a few months. Which is great if you're a seasonal player, but kind of sucky if you're not one. And this is intentional. Blizzard really wants you to be a seasonal player. This wouldn't be as bad if you were likely to get other uniques for other classes, but you're not. Say if you have a level 85 Barbarian with a good unique and a level 70 Sorcerer without one, maybe while you're grinding your Barb, you might get a unique for the Sorcerer. While this is technically possible, it is very unlikely because Diablo IV has carried over the smart loot system from Diablo III, meaning that you are much more likely to get drops for your current class than you are for any others. This was a boring system in Diablo III, and it's still a boring system in the sequel. It limits the entire power of your entire account, and it doesn't really make you any stronger for it either. It's a lose-lose for the player. This design also disincentivizes rolling new characters. If my Barb suddenly found Life Fluidless Yodel while I'm out adventuring, I might be inclined to start a Necro character even if I wasn't planning on it before, because hey, I've got one of the best items for it now, might as well, right? That is far less likely to happen in Diablo IV, and again, that sucks, and I hate it. But hey, I'm having so much fun endlessly stacking all the uniques that I can't use. For comparison's sake, let's look at another popular ARPG and see how it deals with itemization. Let's just pick one at random, and oh hey, look at that! It's Grim Dawn again. Have I mentioned Grim Dawn? You guys should play Grim Dawn. Just like in Diablo IV, in Grim Dawn, level cap is 100 and takes roughly the same amount of time for you to level your first character there. Legendary items don't even have the possibility of dropping until you are at least level 50. The first time you'll find one, you'll already be very deep into the campaign, having beaten the whole story once already and likely diving into the DLC content. And after you've found your first one, you're not going to find another one for a while. Even in the ultra late game, you can go entire play sessions without finding a single legendary item. Legendaries are truly unique in Grim Dawn, and if your character has all legendary items even at level 90, you are considered very lucky. Grim Dawn also does not have a smart loot system. Any type of legendary can drop at any time. Like I said before, this incentivizes creating new characters specifically for item drops that you've gotten. I've done this dozens of times in this game. This does wonders for replayability and keeping players hooked on the game, but also makes it feel like no matter what unique item drops, it is almost always guaranteed to be useful for your account, which is not the case for Diablo 4's uniques. I just wish the items in Diablo 4 felt special, because currently they don't feel special at all. So, we've gathered that Diablo 4 is an ARPG with bad character building and bad itemization, in a genre that completely revolves around character building and itemization. Doesn't sound very good on paper, and it turns out it isn't very good in practice either. At this point, I'm convinced that the only thing that could actually make this game even worse is something awful like predatory monetization. Okay, let's do an experiment. I'm going to flip through some of the menus here, and then you tell me which menu you think Blizzard put the most effort into.
Salutations, one. Come and don the mantle of history's champions.
Yeah, it's very clear what Blizzard's goals are for this game. This shop is ridiculous at trying to get your attention. Reminder, this is a $70 game. Blizzard is constantly adding new stuff, and unless you physically go into the shop and hover over the new shiny cosmetic they're dangling in front of you, this stupid little notification light is not going to go away. You have to physically go in and stare at the item they want you to buy to get rid of it. And you have to do it for every new item. Reminder, this is a $70 game. The part that makes me the most uncomfortable is that a lot of these cosmetics are the coolest ones in the whole game. So far, I haven't been too impressed with how the regular items and armor look in the game, but the ones in the store? I mean, look at this. Or this. Or maybe this. These are obviously the coolest designs that Blizzard has to offer, and they're gonna make you pay for them. Gone are the days when the coolest and rarest aesthetics in the game are reserved for those with immense skill or dedication. Now, you just need 20 bucks. Oh, did you put in an insane amount of time and effort to beat Uber Lilith? Fantastic! Enjoy your ugly-ass horse and a fucking title. Again, this is not a free game. This is not even a cheap game. This is a $70 game. And for that amount of money, I should be able to get the coolest and rarest items in the game. People that defend this type of monetization often say stuff like, well, they can't give out their art for free. Artists worked really hard on this, of course they can't sell it for free. But they didn't sell it for free. Reminder, this is a $70 game. It doesn't feel like it though. It feels more like a mobile game because it kind of is. And that leads us directly into the Battle Pass. Yes, of course, with every game that seeks to disrespect its player base as much as possible, there is a Battle Pass. This Battle Pass costs $10. Okay, now the game costs $80 to stay current with, keep that in mind. And there's really not much here in the way of content. You get some emotes, a shiny new horsey for that great mount mechanic I mentioned earlier, and one, count it, one new armor set. They advertise it as two, but it's the same armor set just recolored. And that's for all 5 classes. And look at the free armor set that you get if you don't buy the Battle Pass, dude. Oh my god, I can't even take it seriously. They're pretty much just putting you in Jester's clothes at this point, which makes sense because you'd have to be a fucking fool to keep falling for this game's scummy tactics. They even give you the option of paying 28 bucks for the accelerated Battle Pass, and then you can skip 20 out of the 90 tiers of content. If you do this, you do get one shitty emote, I guess, but really you're just paying 3 times as much so you can play the game less. Seriously, instead of buying this stupid fucking accelerated pass, please buy any of these great games that are cheaper than this ridiculous thing. Over the course of the Battle Pass, you will earn 666 platinum. Oh yeah, that's right. Arbitrary currencies meant to dissociate their value from real money are in this game, so that's a fun mechanic. This 666 platinum correlates to about $6.66, which you cannot do anything with. Seriously, you can do literally nothing with this amount of money. The cheapest item in the store is $8. This is yet another scummy monetization tactic that Blizzard has adopted from the free-to-play mobile genre and placed into its full-price $70 game. And this is making sure that you always have slightly less currency in your account than you need to buy the next cool thing. At the end of the Battle Pass, you have $6.50, right? Might as well use it on the cool thing that you've had your eye on for a while. But ugh, that cool thing actually costs 2,200 platinum. So you're gonna have to go put more platinum into your account, but you can only purchase predetermined chunks at a time. So you have to buy the $10 twice, so you do, and then you buy the thing, and now, oh look, you still have a few dollars left over of platinum in your account. better use that, and on the cycle continues, and one must imagine Sisyphus a real sucker for this kind of predatory design. Mom, get your credit card ready, a new school design just dropped. It seems like the monetization tactics of Diablo Immortal, a free-to-play game with insanely predatory monetization, have made their way into Diablo IV, a now $70 game with predatory monetization. I bought the game. It wasn't cheap. Why can't I just have the game? Usually, this type of egregious, Battle Pass-centric, currency defamiliarizing game design is reserved for games that are free-to-play or at least have free-to-play aspects. Like Fortnight, free-to-play. Overwatch 2, free-to-play. MOBAs like Dota 2, League of Legends, both free-to-play. Call of Duty Warzone, free-to-play. Halo Infinite, Rocket League, both free-to-play. This is the first time I have ever seen this kind of absurd and greedy monetization on a game that costs $70 fucking dollars. You know who are the biggest fans of Diablo 4 and Diablo Immortal? Blizzard shareholders. Blizzard no longer makes games for the player, and instead makes games for their investors. From the release of Diablo Immortal until now, Activision Blizzard stock is up nearly 20% in a little over a year. Every one of Blizzard's released games over this time have been panned by players. Not even all the sexual harassment lawsuits that saw them paying out a cool $35 million in settlements over the last year could touch the money-making factory that is ActoBliz. It sucks that this has to be said about a once great game developer, but say it with me. Blizzard is not a good company. Blizzard does not make good games. Blizzard makes games that make money. Hopefully now, you get the idea of what I mean when I say Diablo 4 is a caramel onion. On the outside, the superficial aspects of the game look great and appetizing, but the core of the experience is so deeply flawed, it will leave you with a horrible taste in your mouth. In all honesty, I came up with that analogy so I could have a good title and a good thumbnail for the video. But in reality, the game is far worse than what I'm comparing it to. Yes, Diablo 4 did some things right, notably the aesthetics and the combat. But everything else in the game is such garbage that it is an insult to the genre as a whole. The game is broken. The skill builds are laughably simplistic, loot grinding is tedious and unrewarding, and the season pass is so blatantly desperate for my money in a game that I already paid $70 for. I will not be playing the first season of Diablo 4. I won't be playing the second season either. I don't think I'm going to be playing this game anytime soon, especially when there are so many other great options. If you want a better ARPG, Grim Dawn and Path of Exile should have you covered, but here are a few other options that all do the genre far more justice than Diablo 4 does. If you just want a great game and it doesn't have to be an ARPG, I've been having tons of fun in my free time playing Baldur's Gate 3, Risk of Rain 2, BattleBit Remastered, Trackmania 2020, and Armored Core 6, just to name a few. Any of the games that I just mentioned are far better than D4, and I encourage you to go try them out. I don't know, man. I wasn't planning on this video being so negative, but as I kept writing, the flaws of the game just kept coming out more and more. I think I just need to get my disappointment with the game just out in the open. But what do you guys think? Did you like Diablo 4? Did you hate it? Why? Give me your hot takes and unpopular opinions in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like, and if you want more videos discussing games and their cool and sometimes not so cool aspects, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.